you ever wondered where your water comes from? It's just something that we assume will always be there. We turn on the faucet and there it is. But water is all around us. It fills all of the local lakes, rivers, and streams. It is also underground. And we use that water. We use it for all our daily activities and for our recreational and business needs. We drink it, we cook with it, we use it to clean, we swim in it, we skate on it in the winter, and we harness its power. We use it for heating and for cooling. We use water every single day. Like many places, the historic growth of our town included activities like filling wetlands that made spaces, quote, more usable. We drew upon the rivers for their power. We settled our downtowns along the water and constructed manufacturing plants where local people made things. We also dumped our waste back into the rivers where it was carried to someplace else.
A lot of people, I don't think, ever take the time to walk a stream. You have like unbelievable areas that haven't been touched. It's like an amazing thing, and then you go down a little ways where you have a lot of development, then you have areas where you can definitely tell there's been a human impact.
And everything is related. There is nothing which is unrelated or is related only to itself and has no impact on the rest of our environment. Everything we do has some impact.
The watershed works as an interconnected system made up of not only the visible streams, but also the meadows, forests, lawns, gardens, and even miles of paved roads in our town. A stream or river only represents the surface of a watershed system.
There are 8 watersheds in Newtown, so they all play their own little parts as an important public drinking water source with regards to public water and private wells.
When you're looking at it, this is a cross-section of the crystalline bedrock, so the subsurface water actually directly relates to the surface water. So you cannot divide one from the other. You have the rivers that you see actually are coming up from underground. And when you dump something out in your backyard, it actually does relate to the water quality in general.
To the extent that we can control the flow that goes into the groundwater is the aquifer. And that's the water that we need to preserve and use, both in terms of quality and quantity, for the future of Newtown. We get, I think, more than half of our drinking water and water that's used out of that Putatuck aquifer.
The Putatuck River is one of only 8 other streams in the state of Connecticut which is deemed Class 1 water quality by the DEP, as it can sustain native trout populations from year to year. This classification is under siege over the past few years.
For most residents and businesses in the center of our town, the wastewater from toilets and drains is processed at our wastewater treatment plant. This facility is highly effective at removing most of the impurities found in the dirty water.
So here's the outflow from the wastewater treatment plant. All the water processed by the plant enters the stream right here. We do significant monitoring above and below, water sampling, macroinvertebrate sampling twice a year, and the detergents that we use that all end up in the wastewater. And although the phosphates and nitrates and all those things are processed out at the wastewater plant, there are things such as the chemicals, the household cleaning chemicals, the pharmaceuticals that are still in this water and entering our waterways.
Plastics in all forms are everywhere in all of our lives. Research by Mount Sinai Medical Hospital in New York has shown that roughly 70% of many common soaps, cosmetics, personal care products, toys, and household items, including the plastics that they are sold in, contain many chemicals that can cause a host of healthcare concerns, including endocrine disruption, cancer, and male reproductive problems, among others.
We now know that some of these chemicals, in fact, do reside in a lot of the fish that we've always considered to be healthy. The Housatonic River, which is alongside of us, the famous case of PCBs in the fish in that river that came from an engine plant in Pittsfield, Mass. We're still cleaning up the Housatonic and will be for decades to come. The whole food chain has been impacted by chemicals that don't always break down quickly or easily and end up in our diet or in our drinking water. We have had a couple of cases where we started to run into large numbers of polluted wells in a specific area.
Over time, the increase in population, housing, buildings, and other development has put a strain on our clean water, not only because there is a greater demand for it, but also an increase in activities that may compromise the quality of our water. As we cover more land with hard surfaces, less of the water is able to soak into the aquifer from which we draw our drinking water. More of it flows immediately to our rivers, carrying with it a stew of potential pollutants: oil from parking lots, pesticides from our yards, salts from our roads, and soil from construction sites are just a few of the ingredients.
In 1991, the Clean Water Act 2 came through, was passed by Congress, that states adopt new water quality standards. Where it used to be that our water was the thing that we wanted off the roads. Roads are designed to move water off them as quickly as possible. So these were our dumping grounds. The rivers were the place that you put water as quickly as possible, whatever the level or quality of it was. And what we call end pipe pollution. Now, end pipe had to do with the big industries where the glowing green goop was coming out of the end of the pipe. Those were easy to identify because those were hot spots. Our new water quality standards have to do with what's called death by 1,000 paper cuts. We don't have one space that's giving all the pollution or all the sediment that's running into the streams and having to do with water quality issues, but we have lots of them.
There are several areas in our town where persistent problems exist threatening our water. In Fairfield Hills alone, there were 2 oil spills about a year apart that leached thousands of gallons of heating oil, dumping directly into Deep Brook behind the Reed School. Also, an organophosphate insecticide, dieldrin, was used at the Fairfield Hills campus over 40 years ago, and we are still monitoring its persistence in the soil and water. The Noranda Forge site on Mile Hill South is in its 8th year of a 10-year cleanup. The environmental cleanup company, AECOM, has been using a bioremediation process where the affected soils are injected with an emulsified vegetable oil which feeds the natural bacteria that consume the contaminants. Although these threats exist, we are increasingly more prepared to confront our concerns. Identifying these areas is our first priority. The Putatuck Watershed Association continues to partner with other organizations, both local and nationally, to continue this work. Recently, Rivers Alliance of Connecticut provided us with a grant to help manage our several years of collected water quality data so we can see both the long-term trends and the potential problem areas in and around our town's watercourses. From this data and graphs, we see that the areas in town that are the most developed with roads, buildings, and storm drains are also the most impacted.
There was a boom in Newtown from 2002 to 2006 of development. From that, we started our impervious surface analysis with breaking up the 8 watersheds that are in town. 10% is kind of like the threshold for where sensitive watersheds become impacted. The impervious surfaces that we're including are buildings, pools, driveways, roads, patios, sheds, any type of structure of that nature.
The fact that we have areas in town with compromised water quality has many people on edge, and we are working together, often behind the scenes, to research, remediate, educate, and legislate to solve these problems. Twice a year, the Candlewood Valley chapter of Trout Unlimited, along with the town of Newtown and the DEP, performs sampling of local streams for aquatic insects, which are the food source for native brook trout and brown trout. These same trout and the food source they rely on are strong indicators of water health in our streams.
And we work with this in conjunction with the state of Connecticut. They use this actually to make a report to the federal government with respect to the quality of water in Connecticut. And if you look at this first 2 columns, or first 2 rows, so if you go in and you do a sampling and you find lots of these most desirable, you know you've got some pretty high quality water. If all you find are the least desirable, then you know that the water quality could well be impaired.
We had 75 volunteers help us plant several hundred trees and shrubs in this floodplain area. We removed the invasive plants. All these trees you see here were all a part of this restoration project.
When the volunteers get out there, they're just having a genuinely good time, knowing that they will come back in years and see a grove of trees there And so we have this very rich resource that we are proud of, and it gives us our clean drinking water.
As a sixth grader in our town, every student learns about and raises trout through a program called Trout in the Classroom, sponsored by Trout Unlimited. I got to do it when I was in sixth grade, and it was fun. And I learned a lot about water and how sensitive fish are in their environment.
There's enough information in this program that you could use it and support the sixth grade teaching program throughout the year. The kids come in here, they measure pH, they measure nitrates, they measure nitrites, they measure temperature, they measure clarity, they evaluate scent, count the eggs. I mean, they know these fish very, very closely.
A lot of these kids go home and play video games or sit inside, and this process has helped them sort of understand that, you know, there are other living beings out there that we impact. I'm really excited that curiosity is building, and then as they grow and as we get closer to the release, we'll start talking about the environment more toward the end of the year, and how this population represents other populations of animals in our environment.
We recently started a Citizens River Watch, where we have posted signs adjacent to our watercourses in town, which residents are able to report activities and or other potential problems to a dispatcher at our police department. The PWA members are then able to visit the site and determine if a real problem needs addressing. In July of 2016, an intern with the PWA, Cole Baldino, a recent Watershed Science graduate, along with a partnership with the Candlewood Valley chapter of Trout Unlimited, implemented a habitat improvement project to improve wild trout spawning habitat and to create a thermal refuge throughout Deep Brook and the Putatuk River wild trout management areas. The project included bank stabilization, channel alteration, riparian plantings, thermal refuge, and installation of a spawning substrate. The modifications will improve spawning habitat for wild brook and brown trout, as well as improve low water habitat when the river conditions become dangerous for trout in the summer months.
Diligently protecting open space assures that the land which cleans our water can continue to do so, without the added threats of development and impervious surfaces.
We can no longer look from property line to property line without consideration of the larger context to all our neighbors. As we begin to realize that everything really is connected, we begin to see how every little bit that we can do to help does go a long way to help keep our local water clean.
One of the things our involvement with the Putatuk Watershed Association has done is help the town formulate a water study throughout the entire town. One of the other long-term benefits that this tool may be able to provide the town as a whole is an ability to identify larger areas of open space that's currently undeveloped, to identify whether or not there's key critical areas that really do need to be put aside for protection. And if we don't start to think about the undeveloped tracts of land today and the impact that the development may have by building those out, it could have a detrimental health to the water system that we have and the water supply we have in town.
We at the Newtown Forest Association have undertaken a proactive approach to most of our properties to identify what is on there as far as natural resources, and also to take it a step further and walk over the fence and meet abutting property owners. Because what abutting property owners do to their property directly affects us, just like what we do to our property affects the town property, water courses, forest health, etc.
The new stormwater construction techniques help to clean and slow down dirty flow water following a storm event. These methods have been utilized on several notable projects in our town recently, and can also be used in the residential setting. In most places where a pipe or water ditch is proposed, these techniques are effective and in many cases less expensive to install. How we care for our properties can also make a big impact. The use of native plants and abiding by the wetland setbacks are an easy way to foster good stewardship of our landscape. Instead of huge expanses of mowed grass, consider creating a more diverse meadow or grassland area, which requires far less inputs and will help filter the runoff from roadways, parking lots, and turf or agricultural fields. Moreover, they provide critical habitat for our native songbirds, butterflies, insects, and other species.
Working with the developers and working with the Department of Public Works people to come up with solutions too. You have to really be involved in the environment, not just in your town, but across town borders. Again, everything we do goes into the Housatonic River that goes downstream and impacts other people. The problem comes up, and always with land use, with wetlands, with everything, is people's personal right to do what they want to do. When they're confronted saying, you're hurting the environment, and they can do it, without a major impact to their life, they're gonna do it.
As guardians of our planet, we need to be in charge, and we need to continually protect our most basic resource. It takes a little bit of effort on everyone's part to keep our water clean and abundant for all to share.
We've come a long way in the last decade and have a whole new set of tools to help us monitor, analyze, and correct our past mistakes, with the knowledge that we have stalwartly slowed further degradation to our life source, water.
We all need to act now, and we need to get to know our water and make good daily choices which help protect our water, which all life forms rely on.